Hi there guys, it's James from Scruffy Crow, and I'm challenging you, James from JH Miniatures, to a trash terrain challenge.
Hello, Wasteland! Yes, and welcome to a long overdue video. Oh my goodness, this contest between me and Scruffy Crow. This was over the summer. This was 4 months ago. I mean, the competition not only happened and ended, and the winners were decided. I mean, my goodness, we're out of date with this video, but I've got the footage. I know some of you guys are interested from the summer as to how I made my crashed spaceship, so let's jump straight into it. So this was my entry for myself and Scruffy Crow, our cross-channel collab competition of the new Stargrave crashed spaceship trash bash challenge that we decided to set for ourselves. So the idea being you have, I think it was 2 weeks to make a crashed spaceship piece of terrain suitable for 28mm wargaming, like Stargrave by coincidence, and you could only use trash. You could only use recyclable items. You could not use any bits from model kits. You couldn't 3D print any specific parts. I believe Scruffy uses some 3D supports, but to be honest, I'm fine with that because that stuff normally goes in the bin anyway. So the idea of turning it into a piece of terrain, absolutely fantastic. No issue there. So if you're using recycled materials, standard preparation tips apply. So you want to remove any labels, you want to wash it and make sure it's dry, and you want to scuff up all the surfaces with some sanding paper or a file. This is a classic one from Brian Trash Bashing blog, where if you want two of something, have a look for a seam on that plastic item, and you can just cut along that seam. Typically it'll be a little bit thicker or a little bit thinner, and you can use that as a guide for ideally making two perfect halves, like a mirrored item. Because I think one of the keys when you're making something like a spaceship is you want lots of symmetry. You want, I mean, okay, when it comes to the finer details, having a bit of asymmetry is really good. But early on when you're trying to make like engines and things, making sure both sort of sides match, it's really good. Now you can see from this moisturiser container bottle, the plastic is so thin and flimsy everywhere except for the cap, and it's just not going to work. And even when I tried to snap the cap in half to try and use that to like reinforce the base on either side, oh my goodness, it's just not suitable. It's just not going to work. It would create more hassle than it would trying to fill the gaps and trying to fix it. So no, just bin it. And don't be afraid to do that. I mean, you're working with recycled materials, that's fine. You know, you're trying to create new life out of something that would ordinarily just be binned anyway. So it's fine to just get rid of stuff if it doesn't work. Don't feel you have to use something if it's fighting you back. But then getting this entire project fought me back. Same as Scruffy's, bless him.
So we're getting kind of close. Annoyingly though, I've just spilt silver paint everywhere.
Alright, so, you know, I ditched the moisturiser container. I went for this vitamin D container instead, which was a much thicker, much firmer, hard plastic. So, fantastic, let's use that. And as you can see, I'm butterfingers with this project, constantly dropping things and cutting things by mistake and snapping bit. Oh my goodness. Cursed project. Same as Scruffy, bless him. Alright, okay, so here you are. I'm figuring out the sides. I'm trying to figure out how this sort of spaceship will look. And when I've had free moments of work, I've tried piecing together ideas and drawing things and getting things down to kind of visualise in my mind how I want this to work. There's going to be a lot of bicarbonate of soda, baking powder and super glue in this video, so as always, mothers at home, do not be afraid of the white powder you see on the screen. It's baking powder, because it just sets super glue instantly. And being a trash bash, you know, we don't need to waste money on like super expensive accelerant sprays or anything like that. Just use cheap materials. So here we go. So we got a bit of a something happening so far, but as you can see, giant holes. We need to fill these. They ain't gonna work no matter what we try. We need to do something about that. My favourite will always be using this Asda grab adhesive that I find whenever I go shopping at my local Asda Walmart. and I just squidge it into the space, spread it out a bit with a bit of cardboard, and before you know it, it sets a bit like spackle. There are differences at the end of the day. This stuff isn't designed for filling gaps. I've used it in multiple videos, and on the one hand it looks okay, but when it dries it does contract, and you'll see that in a moment. Because you'll spread it out all nicely, but then once it's dried, you see along the top there how it's recessed itself into the gaps, and at the back those big craters and cracks it's opened up where as it's dried it's pulled taut. Now there are easy solutions to this. I mean, I'm going to sand the surface down ostensibly later to just glue a bit of cardboard on because that's flat, but you can go back, refill it with a bit more adhesive or spackle or what have you, and then sand that down again. So here we are, just preparing the deodorant stick engines. Now, I've had my super glue gunk up on me a couple of times. If it ever dries up fully at the top, you can just sort of pull off the dried bit, and that will usually pull out the blockage. The only problem with this is, if it starts running out, it'll just keep running out. Like super glue sticks, I love them, but man, they can be a pain. But they are cheap, so And super glue is the way to go with this project. You can't really use like plastic glues on this. It just doesn't react. There you go. You see it's all weeing out the end there and dripping onto the table. Oh my goodness. What a nightmare. But same as, if you want to secure something like the little toggle, the little dial at the bottom of the deodorant on the inside, just put some glue, put some baking powder, you're done. Or bicarbonate of soda. So here we are trying to figure out the main way these engines will look on the spaceship. It's a strange one because in your mind you'll always have a different image of how this kind of project is going to turn out, and it's only when you start putting things together you realise the different scales and scopes and what works and what doesn't work. And trash bashing is an art unto itself. There's no doubt about it. You ready for the first break? Oh, there it is. Too much pressure on that. It just goes. Oh dear. Alright, so let's have a look at some other plastic junk. So, these little McDonald's spoons are always fantastic. But there's all sorts of bits you'll find if you start looking around you for various usable bits of trash. And never be afraid to change these shapes, to cut them and mould them and create new shapes. Over my time working at DHL, I used to buy so much of this quick spit stuff to help my glasses from fog up, but inside you've got a much smaller little dispenser mechanism than you'd normally get from a hand soap dispenser, and that can be quite nice for little fine details if you cut and clean that. So you can see I've gone round the sort of spaceship shape and I've filled in a few more of the gaps and sanded them and put cardboard on the back to sort that out. So a lot of this just comes down to detailing at this point, and of course for that we're going to need our good friend cardboard. I do like using cardboard in projects because it's a very easy material to use. I mean, if you're ever getting into model making and terrain making and you don't use cardboard, I don't know what's wrong with you, because it's wonderfully thin, it's wonderfully easy to shape. You can do a lot with cardboard. And if any of you guys have ever watched my Gaslands UK videos, you can do a lot with paper. It might be thin, it might be flimsy, but used in the right way, oh my goodness, you can pull off some amazing things with simple, basic, cheap materials. And who doesn't have cardboard? I mean, do you live in a fully plastic household? If you do, fantastic, you've got plenty of plastic to make a spaceship like this. But here you can see I'm just trying to figure out how I'm making the front canopy of this spaceship. In my mind, I imagined it as some kind of hauling vehicle rather than like some daring adventurers, old reliable. Okay, so here I am sorting out how I'm going to make the crashed part of the crashed spaceship, because this isn't just a make a trash bash spaceship challenge. No. It's got to be crashed. It's got to be broken on the ground. Now, if any of you remember back in the day, Games Workshop did a tutorial on how you could cut a Rhino, the 40k Space Marine tank, and I mean, you'll see how I do it in a moment, but you could mark out an area where you want it to look submerged into the ground. For some reason, I can't find pictures of it, but I'm pretty sure it was from their City Fight publication back in the day, you know, back when they used to do terrain tutorials. But the idea is you basically mark out an area which you're going to remove, and this is effectively how it's going to rest on the ground. It uses, you have to have a bit of three-dimensional thinking when you're doing something like this, because it's very easy to sort of cut the wrong place and get lost in translation. Alright, so I used my laser 501 saw to cut through it for the most part, and as you can see, it just completely disintegrated. Most of the filler I'd used had come off, but you get a feel for how this works. The section you've removed, that's going to be how it rests on the table. And then all the bits that did come off, you can either look at gluing back on, which is what I do to rebuild the spaceship, or you can use as surrounding bits of terrain. Because the thing is, when things crash, they don't just stay together perfectly. I mean, you'll have, even small bits will come off. Small things will fly off or explode or burn up on entry or you name it. And if the impact, when it impacts the ground, that's where the main break occurs. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of damage and pieces of debris that do survive rather than, you know, just burning up on re-entry to a planet. So it was quite nice to have all this sort of stuff come off, because then it gives you an idea of how this wreck has occurred, as well as, you know, you can create extra little bits of terrain around it. So to base this, I'm using good old-fashioned foam board, as you can see, and that's a lovely, easy, versatile material to build up, because you can cut it with scissors for the most part, use a craft knife to sort of put a bevel around the edges, and then using, you know, wood glue, using sand, and using all sorts of bits of rubbish, you can build up the area around it.
Hi Chris, thank you for giving me the opportunity to grow, promote, and implement a project that was as simple as here's some rules. External tools are absolutely not required. Remind you how to create and insert the batteries, no light.
Bruh. Now there are extra little bits and pieces that I do for this, but yeah, I'm pretty done with this project now, as you can see. I think there's a reason why I put off this video for the longest time. But when you look at the finished pictures, I mean, I'm happy with it. I think I did, in 2 weeks, I think I did a pretty okay job. It's not my best work. I think the burn marks could have had a bit more improvement. I think I could have put a door on it somewhere, because right now, if you actually look at the full scope of this thing, there's no door anywhere, and that's not great. But by the same token, this cost nothing to make. It can go on any nice sandy wasteland board that I enjoy. I can use all my lovely models that I've in the past made for Judge Dredd and those kind of games as a cursed wasteland kind of, you know, scenario, as well as, of course, Stargrave. But it's the kind of project I would encourage people to do, certainly, because it is fun, and it is tremendous when you do finish it finally. I know it feels, when we're doing these Trash Bash ones, it can feel like they're fighting you back every step of the way, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Okay, so the paint spill wasn't anywhere near as the fact that I forgot I hadn't screwed the top on my PVA, and I've just spilt that everywhere. I'm really not having much luck. This is a cursed build.
But once you've actually finished it and you take a step back, yeah, it is pretty good, and it costs nothing, and it gives you a chance to try different painting techniques, or try different modelling styles that previously you hadn't tried. I mean, I quite enjoyed painting the different sections of the different components in different sort of nice pastel colours, and it does have a retro feel to it, which is quite cool. So yeah, yeah, that was my entry into the Scruffy Crow cross-channel Trash Bash Spaceship collab challenge. And as Scruffy has said in his video from 4 months ago, yes, the results were in, and even on my channel, the overwhelming majority of people voted in favour of Scruffy Crow. It was only on the Trash Bash International Facebook group where people primarily voted for myself, but even then, that was a difference of about 5 votes, so not a massive amount. But yeah, I take my hat off to Scruffy Crow. He makes some fantastic videos. And considering he had just as many difficulties as I had making this, absolute respect for what he came out with, because it is a fantastic build. And yeah, I'd be happy to play against it. I'm not too keen on all the static grass and flowers and things around it, but hey, if it crashed on that kind of world, that's where it crashed. And I do love the amount of chipped paint and debris, and just there's a real sense of impact with his, and I think that's what mine lacks. So credit to you, Scruffy. Absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you all for watching Wasteland, and I will see you all in the next video. Let me know what you think. I mean, I've done a couple of Trash Bash things now, from that giant worm thing for Gaslands to my little single item Trash Bash challenge, the computer mouse for scratch bashing. You know, I do enjoy trash bashing. I mean, all my terrain is trash bash when I sit and think about it. But I think that's the thing. It's using materials that we all have access to and using them in a way. Because even if you look at this and go, oh, what a load of bloody rubbish, I could have done this better, I would never have made that mistake. Good. Use that. Use that energy and make a crash spaceship or make a piece of trash bash terrain. Do it the correct way in your mind. Show us how it's done, because that would be really good. Alright, thank you all for watching Wasteland, and I will see you all in the next episode. Goodbye.
Like I would my normal bird sand, and get plenty of this strewn over the top, get into all those nooks and crannies, and then I'm going to leave that for a while for that all to sort of amalgamate in with the glue, and then we'll dust him off and see what we've got.